Hello everyone, today's story is on the 14th man executed in the United States in the year 2014. He committed murder 93 days after his 18th birthday. If he was 17, he would not have been sentenced to death. While you are listening to this story, I want you to comment if you think people close to the age cutoff should be given leniency with their sentence or not.
Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
Anthony Dewayne Doyle was born on October 16, 1984. According to court documents, Anthony grew up in a troubled home surrounded by illegal substances and violence. He witnessed his parents arguing all the time, and although he had family, the family that did come around exhibited the same behavior as his parents. He had a few uncles that would frequent his home, but they were heavy drinkers, and they had no shame in assaulting their significant others in front of Anthony or any other family members. The only person Anthony found comfort and protection from growing up was his grandfather. They were extremely close, and instead of sleeping with his parents or alone, Anthony shared a room with his grandfather. This made him feel safe and loved. Unfortunately, one day, when Anthony was just 11 years old, he was sleeping next to his grandfather, and his grandfather passed away right next to him. This affected Anthony tremendously, and he became a completely different person. Witnessing death firsthand and losing the only person he felt cared about him was rough. Adults around him did not give him the proper help he needed, despite seeing negative behavior changes. Anthony, who was once considered a good boy, was now constantly getting into trouble. As a teen, he racked up a few misdemeanor charges, and he was once sentenced to the Texas Youth Commission Boot Camp program for juvenile felons for 2 years. Anthony went in as a 14-year-old and was released from the program when he was 16. Not rehabilitated from the program, Anthony's mind was not set on working or making something of himself. He got a girlfriend, and 3 months after his 18th birthday in January of 2003, he and his girlfriend had a 3-week-old baby, and Anthony felt pressure to bring in money. With no job skills and no job experience, Anthony chose not to work for money, but to rob someone instead. He was staying with his mother for free, but that wasn't enough. One day, on January 16, 2003, while at his mother's house, Anthony called Chaha Donuts and placed an order for donuts and breakfast tacos. 37-year-old Hyun Mi Cho was the designated delivery driver, and she drove to Anthony's parents' house with his order. Once at the door, Anthony demanded Hyun give him all of her money. Hyun, who was a South Korean native, had only been in the United States for 2 years, and she was earning money to care for her sick parents back at home in Korea. She told Anthony that she did not have any money, but this upset Anthony. He picked up a baseball bat and assaulted Hyun with it until she died. After killing her, Anthony robbed Hyun by stealing her cell phone, her credit cards, her car, and the food delivery order of donuts and breakfast tacos. He then dumped her body in a neighbor's trash bin that was located in the alley. After he was done getting rid of Hyun's body and cleaning any other evidence left behind, Anthony took off in Hyun's car and went to enjoy the donuts and tacos with friends. He admitted to his friends that he had just killed someone and wasn't playing around anymore. After eating, they all went out to try and use Hyun's credit cards. Back at Chaha Donuts, everyone was growing weary that Hyun had not returned from her delivery, so they notified police. Police went to the last known delivery, which was Anthony's house. They began canvassing homes, and a neighbor discovered Hyun's body in his trash can. When Anthony got word that police found the body, he went back to a friend's house to lay low. Authorities went to Anthony's parents' house, and Anthony's sister told them that there was a wet brown spot on the carpet. Police then walked into the kitchen and saw blood spatter on the ceiling and kitchen walls. They also smelled bleach and fresh paint. The wet brown spot was actually barbecue sauce. In an attempt to hide the bloodstains in the carpet, Anthony drenched the spots in barbecue sauce, thinking that others would assume he dropped food. He also failed in trying to repaint the walls because there was still visible blood spatter. Police also found bloodstained clothes that belonged to Anthony. Anthony abandoned Hyun's car at a local car wash and then dumped all of her possessions into a nearby dumpster. Police ended up finding the car and the possessions shortly after. They also found the receipt for the donut and taco delivery. Anthony's mother tried to convince him to turn himself in and come to the police station to talk to officers. In order to appease his mother, he told her he would turn himself in, but that was a lie. He never willingly went to the police station. Authorities did not fret, though, and they ended up finding him at his friend's house. Anthony was arrested without incident and immediately confessed. Along with his oral confession, he wrote a 10-page confession that took about 2 hours for him to write. Anthony claimed that he felt pressure from his girlfriend to make money to support their newborn, and that is why he did what he did. Anthony was charged with murder, and since he robbed someone in the process of murder, it made his case have a possible outcome of the death penalty. During his trial, prosecutors talked about how often Anthony got in trouble at home and at school. They claimed that he had ties to a violent gang, and with his history, he would not change. Defense brought up witnesses that testified about Anthony's good character and good behavior, along with his hard upbringing. Prosecutors cross-examined defense experts, and they admitted that Anthony was not mentally challenged, had a normal IQ, and understood right from wrong. With that, Anthony was sentenced to death. Years after Anthony was sentenced to death, he did try to appeal his case and sentence. His attorney, Lydia Brandt, argued that back in 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that executing youthful offenders who committed crimes before the age of 18 would offend the Eighth Amendment's protection against cruel and unusual punishment. She claimed that juveniles are different than adults because their brains have not fully matured. She said that development isn't automatically different the second someone turns 18, and it was not fair that Anthony was sentenced to death when he committed his crime less than 100 days after his 18th birthday. Anthony's other appeal claims were that the trial court erred in denying his challenges for allowing Gary Allen and Teresa Goldsmith to be jury members in his trial. In terms of jury member Gary Allen, Anthony argued that Gary was unable to consider the full range of punishment for the lesser-included offense of murder because Gary testified that he would be unable to give probation for murder but could give it for manslaughter. Gary was questioned by a prosecutor, and he agreed that he would keep an open mind while hearing the evidence and that he would give probation in a case where it was appropriate. The defense questioned Gary, and the exchange was as follows. How do you feel about the possibility of considering and having to give, if you thought it was appropriate under the circumstances, punishment as low as 5 years probation? It seems pretty low for life. If you're considering, a probation sentence for the proven death of someone, yeah, I think that's pretty low. I understand what you're saying. A lot of times we'll have a lot of jurors come in and say, you know what, to be real honest with you and be true to my oath and tell the truth, I can't consider that. I can't consider to give that. In a murder case, I couldn't ever consider and give 5 years probation, even if I thought the facts deserved it, I just couldn't do it because we're talking about the loss of a human life. How do you feel about that? I agree with that. You just don't think you could do it, or you think you could do it. I don't think I would feel right about probation for a life, no. Well, like I said, there are a lot of jurors who tell us that. They say being honest with you and true to my oath, if we're talking about a murder case, it doesn't matter to me if the person's never been convicted of a felony before. I just don't think I could ever give a probated sentence. Is that how you feel? Yes. Do you feel pretty strongly about that? Yes, I do. Okay. It's almost like saying the first one is free, if you kill someone, in my personal opinion. Can I talk you out of that, or do you feel pretty strongly about that? I feel pretty strong about that. You think you could give probation for aggravated robbery? Yes. But you just don't think you could do it for a murder offense. Right. The trial judge later explained the range of punishment applicable to capital murder cases. He explained that if a defendant has never been convicted of a felony offense before, the available punishment range could be anywhere from probation for up to 10 years to life in prison, and a fine not exceeding $10,000. When asked if he could consider the entire punishment range, Gary answered, I could. Is that including manslaughter? The trial judge explained that the range is applied to not knowing as well as intentional murders. The trial judge then asked Gary if he could consider the applicable punishment range in the following exchange. The ultimate decision is left to the jury. Therefore, you have to be able to consider the full range of punishment. Is that something you could do, or is that something you could not do? I think I could. Okay, you could keep your open mind and fairly consider any potential punishment range that could come up before you. Yes. Anthony argued that after the judge explained the law to him, Gary finally agreed to consider the full range of punishment, but did not give him any consideration in terms of his specific punishment. In terms of jury member Teresa Goldsmith, Anthony argued that her life experiences were so tragic that she could not set them aside and judge the facts of his case fairly and impartially. Teresa's grandfather had been the victim in a capital murder case, and her mother suffered a nervous breakdown because of it. Her grandfather's killer was sentenced to death, and Teresa's father witnessed the defendant's execution. Prosecutors asked Teresa if she could put her past experiences aside and base Anthony's case solely on evidence, and Teresa replied by saying yes. I asked you, could you put that aside and judge this case? Uh-huh. And I just want to make sure because I know it is a tough thing to have a victim in the family. And I'm not sure how long ago that happened, but the law is going to require you to set any personal feelings aside and then look at just the evidence on this case and decide if this person is guilty of this crime. And then, of course, on the punishment, decide death or life, or answer these questions based on the evidence you hear in the courtroom. Is that something you feel comfortable with? Yes, I do, because I've spent a lot of time trying to reconcile the fallout from my grandfather's murder, and I've done a lot of reading, and I've tried to understand from someone's point of view who has committed murder. And I think I've looked at both sides. And you think that? I think I could be objective. And you could sit as a juror in this type of case? I believe so. Defense then questioned Teresa on the details of her grandfather's murder. Teresa explained that the murder took place when she was 3 and that she did not remember much from that time. She explained that her maternal grandfather, who owned a liquor store, had been shot in a robbery of that store, and the shooter received the death penalty. She explained that her mother was 33 years old at the time and had experienced a nervous breakdown because of the murder. Some people would say, I'm past that. I can be a fair juror. You've said I think I can. I've got to press you a bit harder here, obviously. I have to know. Can you do it or can you not do it as far as being fair and impartial in judging this case and this case alone, or will that be a problem for you? Well, of course it won't be easy. I could do it because I do believe in forgiveness and the basic goodness of man. Okay, and that's, we hope everybody feels that way. Sometimes people in your situation don't feel that way. Uh-huh. And I appreciate you being candid and telling us about it. But my main concern is this. This type of offense is no, it's not. I can't say it's identical, but it has the same elements as murder plus robbery. Right. Do you feel like that because of that could cause a problem for you? I mean, you say I think I can, I believe I can, but can you tell me today, yes, I can, or can you only say I'm not sure? I can. Okay, you think you can? Teresa nodded her head. Can you say yes or no? Yes, I can. Because Teresa agreed to sentence Anthony to death, he did not believe she was able to set her past experiences to the side. Both points of error were overruled. Anthony also claimed that the lethal injection violates the 8th Amendment because it produces unnecessary pain and lingering death. The appeal denial response was that Anthony raised this issue in a motion to set aside the indictment, but he failed to provide any evidence or further argument on the motion at trial. We have previously concluded that we could not address this type of claim when the record is not sufficiently developed. Anthony Doyle's execution was set for March 27, 2014. The Amnesty International set out an urgent notice to the public, pleading for assistance in getting Anthony's day of execution. Urgent action. Execution set for crime committed at age 18. Anthony Doyle is scheduled to be executed in Texas on March 27th for a murder committed in 2003 when he was just 18 years old. If he had been 93 days younger at the time of the crime, he would not be facing execution. He is seeking executive clemency. 2 hours before Anthony's scheduled execution, his attorneys argued that during his murder trial, jurors were given unknowingly false evidence about Anthony's inability to be rehabilitated while he was confined at a juvenile detention facility for his delinquent behavior years before Hyun Cho's murder. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected the last appeal to block his execution. It was Thursday, March 27, 2014, at the Huntsville unit in Texas. He was asked if he had any last words. He remained silent and shook his head no. He closed his eyes when he was given the lethal concoction at 6:24 p.m. He died 25 minutes later at 6:49 p.m. None of his family was there to witness the execution, but he did have a friend and a spiritual advisor there that he picked to watch his execution. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments below.